Hi everyone. Many investors receive their quarterly investment statements around now, and some of us are seeing some significant reductions in the investment values. If that's the case for you, how worried should you be, and what should you do about it? Let's quickly look at where fluctuations in our investment portfolios come from and how we should handle them. Simplistically, there are two kinds of investments, stable and volatile. An example of a stable investment would be cash or a money market fund earning interest. In these types of investments, you don't have much risk of the value of the cash decreasing, and you'd expect the balance of your investment to grow steadily as interest adds to it. That sounds good, doesn't it? But it's not all puppies and rainbows, because stable investments tend to earn the lowest returns and are often taxed the most heavily, reducing the returns even further. In fact, usually to a level below the inflation rate over the long term, making this option the least attractive, because when you account for the effects of inflation, your investment's actually depreciating over time, even though the balance seems to be growing. When you invest in cash, you escape the short-term volatility of stock markets, but you fall prey to the gradual erosion of inflation instead. Examples of volatile investments would be shares, long-term bonds, and property stocks. The value of these types of investments can change dramatically on a daily basis. Over time, though, they tend to give better returns than stable investments. Over how much time, you ask? Well, one study I saw showed that in South Africa, no other investment did better than shares over any 18-year period or longer. Many times, shares outperformed everything else over much shorter periods too, and there were occasions when cash, bonds, property, gold, or perhaps paying off a home loan or even inflation outperformed shares over various time frames. The shorter the period, the less predictable the outcome. But in the end, shares have always outperformed everything. Most portfolios blend stable and volatile investments in various proportions to cater for the risk appetite and investment goals of different investors. If your portfolio consists mostly of stable investments, it will be less volatile, but will also grow less over time. If your portfolio consists mostly of volatile investments, its day-to-day value will vary a lot, but over time it will probably grow more than a stable portfolio. Investors often say they understand this trade-off when they start their investment, because they have the long-term performance records of the more volatile funds compared to the more stable funds to look at, and higher returns look more attractive than lower returns. But when their money is actually in the investment and they experience the volatility for themselves, it's much harder to keep the long-term perspective. Seeing investment values drop as steeply as we're seeing right now can be quite distressing and can result in investors making rash decisions, because they fear that the value of their investments will continue to drop and that they might lose their money if they don't do something. From an investment market's point of view, the coronavirus will most likely blow over in 3 to 12 months, depending on how well we manage the situation. And then markets will probably improve again. This is not the first time the market has plummeted in the face of a crisis. Every other time it came back up, sometimes really quickly, other times really slowly, but every time it came back up again. Maybe looking at your statement, you feel like such a big fluctuation demands some kind of defensive response. That's natural. Human beings would not have survived this long as a species if we didn't respond to things that make us afraid. But if we're honest, often we tend to act on emotions and then rationalize our actions afterwards. I'm going to ask you to pause for a moment and consider your next investment step carefully. Slow down before you do anything. Consider this. A sense of danger triggers our fight or flight response. A flight impulse prompts us to get away from the danger. What does that look like in the investment arena? Investors who feel they should be switching out of a volatile fund into something more stable are experiencing the flight response. In this situation, no matter how we rationalize it, doing that guarantees we get hurt because we sell our assets at a loss. Investors who do this cause their own loss. Then they blame the market or the investment manager or someone else. But the fact is, it's not a loss until you sell for less than you bought. Then there's the fight response. An investor who doesn't try and flee the situation but holds steady, trusting in his investment strategy, knowing these downturns become upturns, is responding to the fight impulse. This investor still owns his assets and gets to sell at a profit down the line. If you've ever been sad, you've probably listened to a little country music. Kenny Rogers said it well when he sang, "You gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em." So I guess what I'm trying to say to you today is, this is a hold 'em situation. I hope this has helped you somehow, but of course you're welcome to be in touch with me if you need to discuss the details of your unique situation. I'd really appreciate it too if you'd share this post and like the My Wealth Guys Facebook page so you'll see our next posts too. Your comments and your questions are welcome. Please tell us what's on your mind. I'd love to talk to you. Till next time, take it easy out there.